Hey guys, what's going on? It's Savage here, and today I'm with Evan, and today we're going to be talking about our biggest concerns for the game, or at least some of the concerns that we have for the game that we've been seeing throughout the last couple of days, like in the most recent story trailer, or the launch trailer that we got from Insomniac, which was actually really amazing, but there was a few things that was a little weird there. So Evan, can you explain what was kind of weird there?
So, first off, hi there, true believers. Thanks for tuning in the video. Second off, if you may have noticed one shot in the trailer where Spider-Man is looking out over the city, you see this awesome shot of the entirety of Manhattan. It looks beautiful. The shoreline looks gorgeous. The skyline looks beautiful. But the building on the far right side of the city is actually what we thought was the Freedom Tower, the One World Trade Center that is actually a real life building in New York City. And in the 2016 trailer, in the 2017 trailer, and even in the 2018 demo, we've seen this building throughout the entire game. But recently, a fellow Insomniac by the name of Vidi on Discord, and also James Stevenson posted this on Twitter as well, is that what we see in the gameplay launch trailer is indeed the final golden build of the game. But Vidi confirmed that they actually took out the Freedom Tower in the final game. And even though the tower looks super tall, it's, as far as the eye can see, it's a definite skyscraper in the city. It is a tower, but it's not the Freedom Tower. It's not that exact licensed building in the game. We do have the Empire State Building, and we do have the Chrysler Building, and of course the Flatiron Building and other landmarks in this New York. But that particular building is actually changed and is not the Freedom Tower anymore, which I find actually a little bit disappointing in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really crazy that they can't get a rights to the building. They have the Empire State Building, and they have all these other iconic New York buildings and of course places in this place. I mean, it's just really weird that they're not going to put in the Freedom Tower. And it seems like something that would have happened. It's not that big of a deal, right? It's not like the craziest thing ever, but it certainly is a little bit taking it away from us as people who want to see a full New York and a more realistic New York.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And we've seen that ever since 2016, that we were going to get a full-on, fully fledged, district by district layout of Marvel's New York. And this is
Hmm.
New York, but it's in the world of the Marvel Universe. So we're going to get, of course, landmarks to Avengers Tower and Jessica Jones' Alias Investigations and Matt Murdock's law firm. But we also are going to get, obviously, huge and big, important New York City landmarks like Central Park, Times Square, the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, and of course, what we thought was Freedom Tower. And we thought this all the way back in 2016, and we even saw this back in the E3 demo for 2018, which was just 2 months ago. And that's really crazy that even though it's been such a short amount of time, they had to take it out near like the last second of their development. And even though it's not like Salvage said, it's not a deal breaker, it's not going to ruin the game. But it would have been nice to get that fully in-depth New York experience that we haven't been able to see in a AAA Spider-Man video game ever. And again, it's not anything serious, but it is still a minor detail that needs to be pointed out. And even though it's going to be cool to go up that building regardless, it will be a bit upsetting knowing that it's not actually the real Freedom Tower, or at least a digital version of the Freedom Tower.
Absolutely. Now, we were talking beforehand about some of the concerns that we have, but I didn't actually mention one of them. Now, I still have a little bit of a problem with one of the boss battles, and that's Shocker. Can you reassure me about the boss battles real quick? Like, what do you think about the boss battles? I saw like the Mr. Negative train fight, and I think that's going to be amazing. But with all the other ones, like Electro and Shocker, it just seems like you're chasing them and web swinging the entire time. Can you kind of reassure me about some of these boss battles if you can, or are you concerned about them too?
Well, for me personally, I got to play the demo at E3 and San Diego Comic-Con, and
Hmm.
during my time at both those conventions, I got to fight Shocker probably 3 to 4 times. And each time, I actually discovered something new about the boss fight, some new attack that Shocker would do, or a way that you can actually take him out in a different, ability that you can use, either using gadgets or using your own, Spider-Man fisticuffs.
Right.
It is a bit simple. I will say that you got to go and pick up an object, throw it at him, then punch him, then swing away and escape. But you can also parkour away. You can wall run. You can jump behind him. You can kind of trick him to hitting some things to hurt himself. There's a lot of ins
Right.
and outs with that boss fight that haven't been shown off in a lot of videos yet. But I will say that we have seen so far the Shocker boss fight. the full fight, and I would say like the first half of the Kingpin boss fight. And both of those looked really great. Specifically, now the Kingpin boss fight, where there's all these layers. There's machine guns firing at you. Fisk is trying to attack you. There's going to be henchmen coming in to try and fight Spider-Man as well. So there's a lot of layers to that fight, and I do like that. I will say, though, even though they're going for a very cinematic feel, which I do appreciate, there is always that possibility that it could be a bit simple. It's just like what you said in a previous video, like punch, dodge, attack, punch, dodge, attack, so kind of that back and forth rope-a-dope mechanic that they have done in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and even in a little bit in Web of Shadows, crazy enough. But I do really like that game. But I do think that there are going to be moments in the game where the boss fights won't feel as expansive as we're hoping for. But I will say, though, the characters that we have seen, like Electro and that Raph demo, looked phenomenal, chasing him through the prison and trying to get the drop on him. And then his final fight, which we haven't even seen yet, is going to probably look sensational. There's also the fights with each individual character, Scorpion, Rhino, Vulture, all these characters. And there was also some new concept art that actually showcased that Spider-Man will be fighting Scorpion and Rhino at the same time. So there's going to be ins and outs with these boss fights, multiple boss fights they have to take on at the same time simultaneously. And even though we haven't seen all of them yet, I do have a lot of faith that Insomniac knows that they don't want to go for a simple boss fight, but they do want to try and give players something that is interactive while being very dynamic, both at once. So I do think that they've learned from like the Arkham games, of course, and the past Spider-Man games and their own games when it comes to boss fights. So even though we don't know for sure how well the boss fights will work out, I do think that they will be something truly visually appealing to look at and hopefully play.
Yeah, right. So the Rhino and Vulture thing really gets me hyped because I think Slickmoff and I think it was even you maybe somebody mentioned two boss fights or two guys going at you at once and how intense it would be to try to balance that type of boss fight where you have to pay attention to the air and then you have to pay attention to the ground, then the air, then the ground. It seems like that would be really, really cool and something that would completely change up a boss battle that we've never seen before. And especially from like the Arkham games where you usually fight one boss guy at a time. You fight like Mr. Freeze and then you fight Penguin and then you fight Joker. If two guys are coming at you at once, it's going to be much more intense and much more action-packed. And it would actually make the player maybe even improve in the game more than they would if it was just one guy at a time.
Definitely. So, I know there's going to be a lot of variety when it comes to all these boss fights.
Right. So what's another concern that you have with this game? What's one of the other things that you would really be scared that would not be utilized enough of or something like that?
Well, I was already kind of taken aback that knowing that the Freedom Tower is actually not going to be in the game, which I already found kind of really shocking in my opinion. But that's not a deal breaker like we just mentioned. But one thing that I am actually concerned about, I'm sure it'll be fine, but I don't know if it'll be like the most revolutionary gameplay mechanic, is stealth. And what we've seen so far is that I do think that the way on they're handling stealth so far is fine. We've seen Spider-Man in air vents. We've seen him take out guys on the ground, or he can even do it on walls and stuff like that. And that's kind of similarly, sorry to break it to you guys, but The Amazing Spider-Man did that as well. But I just hope that Insomniac have taken looks at those games and seeing how those games pretty much just try to rip the stealth mechanics from the Arkham games and just copy it into those games. So far, though, we do know that there will be upgrades for Spider-Man's combat and gadgets, but hopefully that also includes stealth at some point as well. Maybe stealth take down two guys at once, maybe use some gadgets for more stealth mechanics. We don't know for sure, but I do know that the way on how they're using it so far from what we've seen is that you can do it from air vents, behind people, maybe on ceilings or walls. It's a lot of variety, I will give them that, but I just hope that they somehow can innovate the stealth to a way that makes it feel fresh, new, and not just like, oh, we've seen this in another game, or oh yeah, this is what Arkham did. Because you know that there are going to be some people out there that say that exact statement. So hopefully there will be at least some mechanic with the stealth that will showcase Spider-Man in a way that we haven't seen him, use that type of maneuver before for enemies and taking them down one by one or multiple times.
Yeah, and in my opinion, when you mention the gadgets and stuff, when you mention all of this stuff, it just seems like although Peter Parker is a scientist and he would use all this stuff to his advantage, it does seem like the Arkham games are a heavy inspiration for this stealth ability that you can like shoot out combat that takes out a guy and then distract a guy and then of course come up behind him. In Amazing Spider-Man games, it's not really that in depth. And of course, when you take cues from the Arkham games, it's not always a bad thing. But hopefully, they do at least spin it in a way that makes it its own. It makes it Insomniac's, and of course, probably make it better than the Arkham games potentially by making it more varied in the things that you can do with all of the gadgets and all of the combat moves that you can do against enemies in stealth.
Yeah, I completely agree. And since we also know that there's going to be lots of enemy varieties, that is one thing that I will say that the Arkham games did extremely well, specifically in Arkham Knight, where they had so many different enemies that were camouflaged to Batman's detective vision, enemies with the jammers that you couldn't use detective vision. There were the enemies with guns, with mines strapped to their bodies. Tons of enemy varieties during the stealth that made it challenging and made it feel like a mini puzzle for you to try and solve. And okay, how should I take these guys out? And that's exactly what I want for Spider-Man. And hopefully they can even improve the stealth somehow from the Arkham games into this. I hope they can. But again, Spider-Man isn't really a character that uses stealth. But the fact that they are having stealth in the game regardless, I just hope that they really took their time with trying to make something fresh, something new, and something that players will actually want to do instead of just going webs blazing. Because that is what they have said, that it is an option that you can either go in and take out the bad guys and just fight them however you want, or you can do stealth and you'll actually be rewarded with more experience for taking out more enemies in a stealthy way. So that is an incentive that they're giving the players to try and take them out faster. But I will say that I just hope that there is a lot of depth to the stealth, like you said, which I definitely agree.
All right, yeah. So, is there anything else you want to add? I've already basically voiced my concerns, the boss battles and stuff like that. That's one of my main concerns, and I don't really have anything else that's too grand. But now that you mentioned the stealth and even some of the city changes, those are also some of my concerns as well, and I hope they kind of stay true to what they are. So, is there anything else you want to add?
I think that's about it. I will say that there is some concerns that I'm having with Miles Morales' involvement within the story, but given the new gameplay launch trailer, I think they are going to use him to just the right amount. I just really hope that they utilize Miles in a way that makes sense and that actually proves his worth for the story. But other than that, I think that the combat looks solid. The swinging looks like the best swinging in any Spider-Man game. Graphics are sensational. Story's going to kick all kinds of butt, and the villains look great, and the boss battles feel really, really well. When I played it at E3 for Shocker. But other than that, I think I'm a little bit upset that Freedom Tower is not in the game, and I hope that stealth is actually something used to its max potential. But other than that, I think that is all my little issues with the game.
All right, well, thank you, Evan, for being on the channel. It's always fun to have you on here and talk about Spider-Man PS4 because, of course, you know basically everything about Spider-Man, and it's always fun to get your opinion on it.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Salvage. I'm very honored that I could be on here and talk to you about the game. Nothing makes me more happier than just talking to anyone who's excited for Spider-Man PS4, and it's so crazy that it's less than a month away. It's insane.
It's crazy. It's insane, dude. All right, well, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to go check out Evan. His link is going to be in the description below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace out.